So we're taking effects and reasoning them back to a cause. And that's of course, the scientific worldview.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, you talk in your own book, Frank, about the Han Solo as an interesting example of someone who goes from this kind of hard-bitten, cynical skeptic in the first set of movies to, as Paul said in the final one before he dies. And sorry, there are going to be spoilers, I'm afraid, in this in this. If you haven't watched the Star Wars films, where have you been, frankly? But the point is that he goes on this kind of journey. Now, it's interesting. Paul says that's because it kind of has a more, in a sense, rational scientific basis ultimately that it gets transformed into. What's your feeling on the change of mind of Han Solo, Frank?
Well, I think Paul's right that it is based on evidence. And of course, as Christians, I would argue that our view is based on evidence as well, that we know God by his effects. So an effect is creation. If that's an effect, then we must reason back to a cause, a creator. A design is an effect, so we reason back to a cause, a designer. We have a moral law written on our hearts. That's an effect, so we're reasoning back to a moral law giver. We have this ability to be rational. That's the effect, so we're reasoning back to a mind. So we're taking effects and reasoning them back to a cause. And that's of course, the scientific worldview. And I think that Paul's right that when Han Solo sees these things actually happening, he doesn't just blindly go, oh, guess I'm going to believe in the Force now. He actually sees the effects of the Force. So he reasons back to a cause known as the Force. And I'm looking at a quote here by George Lucas, who said this. He said, I put the Force into the movies in order to try and awaken a certain kind of spirituality in young people, more a belief in God than any particular religious system. Now, of course, when he said that, inevitably, he's going to have to put forth some sort of religious system. And in his view, it turned out to be this pantheistic kind of potpourri, as Paul said, of these different beliefs that's more mystical, less personal.